Mr. Muhammad, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Excellent. I hope that you can hear me loud and clear as well. And I just want to welcome everyone else out there in the Level Up Past Corporate Trauma podcast. We're back at it again. This is our third episode, and we got a doozy for you this evening. And that handsome gentleman in the screen with me is not, I repeat, is not Mr. Robert Felder. Mr. Robert Felder is engaging with a prior commitment with his family, and standing in for him tonight, which promises to be a power-packed conversation, is my friend. And I owe this guy a favor. If you haven't gone to my website, carbonadocoaching.com, and clicked on corporate trauma, on that website, there's a very comprehensive interview that I did with Mr. Leroy Muhammad, who is a professional leadership development specialist, specializes in all sorts of things. I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself. But he interviewed me on his podcast, Pushing from Your Passion into Your Purpose. And I gave a very comprehensive look at corporate trauma. So check that out. You can see both of us in action. That is up. And I know Mr. Muhammad will give you an idea of how to reach that. But Rob, my main man, my partner, right, is handling some family business, and that is a great example of what this professional life presents for us. Sometimes we have to take a break and go do the right thing for us and our family. But, that doesn't stop the show. I'm so excited for us to get into what we're going to talk about this evening. Remember, the Level Up Past Corporate Trauma podcast, if we do our job correctly, we're going to give you a little bit more courage under fire, right? This is a platform that is dedicated to, for, and from the perspective of the professional, dealing with all things professional life, work life, especially the negative interactions that contribute to what we call and define corporate trauma as the authors of corporate trauma. And those are a pattern of behavior that culminates from experiencing negative interactions in the workplace, leading the professional to feel fear, stress, anxiety, even anger, frustration, depression, and then my favorite, cognitive dissonance, where you become a caricature of yourself in order to survive on the basis of what you're feeling for the sake of a paycheck. And so we're going to discuss these things weekly, every Thursday night. And tonight, we're going to be talking about a very loaded subject matter, which is women of color professionals and their plight. Something very near and dear to my heart for a number of reasons. But before we get into that, I just want to give Leroy an opportunity to introduce himself, say anything else, as he is our guest co-host this evening. Leroy.
My man. I'm so excited. I'm trying to, you know what I'm saying, relax.
Hey, look, man, I owe you a favor.
Start getting carried away. It's so good to be with you. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's really an honor to be here with your group. This whole piece, this movement is really something. As we watch, myself included, watch you all take this thing in a direction that is refreshing and a sign of the times, to be honest, from my standpoint. As Jamal said, I'm Leroy Muhammad. I'm a life coach, business coach, and do a lot of different things. I just want to double up on what he mentioned in terms of the podcast interview that we did. You know, up to that point, he said, this is talking about you. This is one of the most extensive that I've given. So people want to get an opportunity to find out where you're coming from and what this piece is about and how they see themselves in this whole, the corporate outlay, if you will. And also to let people know that you're not alone in a way that only you, Jamal, can describe and put it for people. It was an honor to have done that piece with you. But the Turn Your Passion into Podcast is something that we came up with. We also have a newsletter, but the podcast that you can plug in is the Turn Your Passion into Profits Podcast.com.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to allow you to give yourself a shameless plug. That's what this is all about, right? So, and we'll give the mic back over to Leroy before the evening is over, so you can learn how to get in contact with him. He is very good at what he does. I have benefited from his expertise personally. And I advocate for it. Life coaches, you know, I have a coaching business for professionals, you know, and I tell people all the time, if you were a professional athlete, especially in a one-person sport like tennis, right, you would have a coach. Even in a team sport, you would have a coach. If you were a recording artist, right, they would have a whole team behind you, right, and you would have coaches guiding you and developing you, the talent, you, the asset, you, the treasure, and helping you guide yourself and navigate around pitfalls, right? But there are more professionals in everyday fields of endeavor than there are athletes and recording artists. But how many of us have people in our corner holding us accountable to that which we say we want to do to be successful and to help us navigate from one point of our career or our professional journey to the next, right? So if recording artists and professional athletes need coaches, so do you, right? And I want to make this very clear, especially it's key to the conversation tonight, the difference between professionals and employees. I've said this before, right? See, there's nothing wrong with being an employee, right? That's where a lot of us start, but you're really exchanging time for money, right? And you have a set amount of hours, right, to get something done at the end of the day a positive result in reflection to whatever job you may have. But a professional is compensated on their value, regardless if they spend 40 hours a week or if they spend 15 minutes a week, right? And women of color in particular, Leroy, have had a incredible impact on my career. I have been very successful in a lot of points in my career, and I've been not so successful in other parts of my career. But some of the most integral gatekeepers to my development as a professional have been women of color, Black women in particular, right? And what I have learned since getting into this side of the business and this side of being a professional and helping people along their journey is that women of color statistically are the most educated. And then vicariously or indirectly, because of that, the most qualified in a lot of circumstances, right? They are the most dependable and reliable segment of our workforce. And then in personal experiences, they are some of the most versatile professionals out there. There's not too many things that women of color have not been extremely impactful and contributed to in a significant way. Yet one of the most underpaid in comparison to their male counterparts. Women in general have to work until March of the next calendar year to make what their male counterparts make January to January. And when you start to segment women as a demographic based on color, that pay gap gets even wider and wider. I believe it's somewhere between 60 and 70%, 70 cents on the dollar for women of color, Black and Latinx in particular, right? And they are the most vulnerable and unprotected demographic of professionals because of the pay gap and because of a lot of other things that I don't want to necessarily spoil our show tonight, because we have a very, very special guest that's going to come on and share some thoughts. But I just want to say, I the righteous indignation because of how much women of color have meant to me personally in my career, but to witness and to see and to hear and to experience sometimes alongside my women of color counterparts in the workplace, what they actually go through, it really sparks my righteous indignation. And I want to, and to be frank, Leroy, I get upset. I get very angry sometimes. And I want to do stuff that was, obviously I'm a Black man. I have a mother, I have sisters, and there's a certain way that I was, that I grew up, and there was a certain emphasis that was given to me as a young man in relationship to the women in my life. And I carry that to work with me. And it is a balancing act, right? That I have to tell myself, hey, this is professional life, right? And not to be, because Black women of color are not defenseless. They don't need me for protection. They don't, and so I have to walk back that line. But I wouldn't be honest if I didn't tell you, what my sentiments are, but that's just a little bit of what I had on my heart. What do you think about, some of that stuff, Leroy?
Well, the bottom line for me is that most of what you said, it's as though you took the thoughts right out of my head. And in particular, the last piece where you talked about, them really not needing a protector in the workforce, which we all know can be treacherous, filled with landmines, etc. The first thing that I try to portray in the workforce, especially around women of color, is that I'm competent. Then once we get past that, now looking for other areas, because you have to be competent first. And then I gotta know that you're confident. Once we get past that, I got your back, you got mine. but that I have to, coming from a similar background and grooming, that you want to protect.
Right.
I'm with you.
Yes.
But I have to draw that back and say, you know, let me get in where I can fit and let me know, you know what I'm saying, how I can help.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a couple comments from the audience, right? CBN says, you know, time for money is equals employee value for time equals professional. And Tanisha, you know, actually adds on to this conversation saying that women of color have the most student debt as well. Statistically, that is a major statistic that I missed. Thank you, Tanisha.
Okay.
And then, man, it, you know, it helps to know that women of color are coming into their own after so many years of major contribution, right? You know, as we see the development in a lot of organizations providing a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative in offices in their firms and whatnot, you see women of color taking leadership positions in this realm recently, you know, in a very significant way. But we can't lose sight of their contribution in particular, you know, all the way from the mailroom to the C-suite level. I mean, it's just if we were to chronicle what their impact has been on our workforce, and then our community in general, you know, we would be here all night, you know, talking about those things. But as of recently, 2021, and it's almost like as you kind of, you know, look at, you know, what's going on in current affairs, recent news, it's almost like you take one step forward and 10 steps back. And I've been reminded that, man, even though there's a divine rise in the feminine, there's so many unresolved things that we have to, you know, kind of resolve in the professional sector, both private, public, for-profit, nonprofit, education. There's so many things that have been left unsaid, and I can't say it enough of the impact that women of color in particular have had on my career personally. What do you think?
Same. You know, whether they're leading from the front or pushing someone else out of the limelight. Yeah, I think you mentioned a minute ago being multifaceted. That's exactly how I would categorize it.
Right. Absolutely.
Just able to do a myriad of things.
And underrated as teachers and learners and developers, and being able to speak and communicate in different ways in order to derive positive results in everybody. You know, my experience with women of color in the workplace, they're not, and I don't want to objectify or talk like this is a myth, like women of color as a demographic, as this mythical anomaly, right? But I have to give credit where credit is due. It's not what you see, what you get. My experience is that there's so much of a deeper reservoir of value because of just their awesomeness. Black girl magic, right? Yeah, and we could you know, step on some cliches here, but it's just an incredible experience for me personally. And you know, I definitely want to give credit where credit is due. But Leroy, the fact remains is we are unqualified to really dive deep into this experience, right? Because obviously I don't identify as a woman of color, right? So, there's only, you know, I'm limited in that way, and I definitely don't want the audience or this podcast to arrogate as if we know based on what we see. So tonight we brought on a guest. So I hope I hope everybody's ready for our guest. So I'm gonna bring her into the studio live. Hi there, Heidi. Hold on one.
Okay.
It
Can
seems
you
like
hear me?
we can hear you. Absolutely.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can't hear you.
Wow.
Take out your earphones. How about now?
All right, let's see. I still can't hear you.
You may have to enable the microphone feature on your device.
Yeah, I cannot hear you. You can hear me, but I can't hear you. Strange.
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely hear you. And 1 second to all of our listeners, our audience, while we get Heidi's technical stuff.
You want me to jump off and come back in?
Yes, you can do that.
Okay, I'm going to jump off and come back in.
All right, not a problem. There you have it. Murphy's Law, right?
Right.
What can go wrong,
Straight up.
straight up will go wrong.
Man.
You know, I was giving an interview on a podcast, and the whole computer system just froze. I had to immediately go get another terminal and do something different. It was an incredible experience, and the audience could see sweat beads and all kind of stuff. Heidi, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
All
Yay,
right.
Heidi.
Hey, listen, I wasn't worried. Because if anybody was going to work it out, right, it was going to be you this evening. So no worries. I would like to introduce you to our audience, everybody. This is Hedi Lewis-Ivey, comes highly recommended from a network that I belong to speak with us this evening about the plight of women of color in the workplace. Hedi is a businesswoman and professional in every sense of the word. She has decades of financial and finance, in particular, experience, international as well as domestic. Hedi is holding it down in the number of areas and arenas. She is also a consultant, and she is has blessed us tonight, you know, to be here to help us carry this conversation. So Hedi, before we start asking you any questions, please introduce yourself any further than I may have, and tell us a little bit about yourself. Hey, and how you doing now that you can hear us?
Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you again for having me on here. Like you said, I've got decades of experience in finance, both international and domestic. And I'm also an award-winning and multi-best-selling author. And yeah, so that's me.
So you would venture out to say that you are a bit more qualified to have this conversation than me and my counterpart. Hey, listen, I look, I'll mess something up, so I need help here.
I think years of experience have qualified me to be able to have this conversation.
Okay. Well, you know what?
I'm a woman of color in corporate America says I'm qualified to have this conversation.
All right. Well, we're going to go with that. You know what I'm saying? I don't need any more convincing. All right. So Hedi, I mean, how can I ask you this? As a woman of color in a Black woman, specifically, you know, what should we know about the plight women of color professionals today, 2021, right? And you know, I got a public school education, so I had to look up and make sure I spelled the word plight correctly. And when I did, I got a refresher on the definition.
Mhm.
And one of the definitions said a dangerous and difficult set of circumstances that one must navigate.
Mhm.
So based on that, what could you tell us is your perspective on the plight of women of color in the professional sector today?
I believe that we have to know, like you said, how to navigate, right, the corporate arena. And the only way for us to know that is to have somebody, an ally, right, that can help us navigate the politics of corporate America. Because we're not always privy to the inside information. And so we need to have an ally, somebody that's going to bring us to the table, somebody that's going to speak to us about how to navigate the pitfalls of the politics that take place, all the the meeting before the meeting, so to speak, right? Somebody that's able to speak to us about those things. Right, because we think we're going into the meeting not knowing that there was a meeting before the meeting.
You too, huh?
Yeah.
Hey, Leroy, she said politics twice.
Yeah, right. Yes, sir.
Well, okay, so I don't understand. Would we vote here? What do you mean? What do you mean by
So
politics?
let me put it this way, so that we understand the culture
Yes.
of the company, right? So that we understand how to navigate the culture, so we know how to speak to who it is we're speaking to, how we know how to have a conversation with specific people in specific places within the organization. That's what I mean about the politics, and how not to
Absolutely.
get tripped up into some of the battles that go on. So you kind of got to know who needs what and be able to speak to the need of each of those parties.
Now, see, I haven't quite mastered that yet.
Oh, that's not easy.
You know what I'm saying? But I've watched my sisters, my women of color counterparts do that almost flawlessly at times. What's your take on that, Leroy?
You said
Word right out my mouth. Like, yeah. Being able to recognize is key. That gives you enough time to figure out how you're gonna respond.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing the terrain is everything.
Mhm.
Which is what I think you might have just said, Ms. Hackett.
Yes.
For sure, you have to know the terrain. Here's the thing. I think that because and I'm not trying to use cliches and all of that kind of stuff. I think that because women are naturally intuitive, we can sit in the room and pick up things, right? And so take that intuition and then again have somebody that we trust in the organization that we can talk to about what we've perceived, right? To see if our perceptions of a situation is right. And then based on that, um, learn listen to what people say and watch people's body language, because more about what people don't say and how their body language speaks tells a whole lot more than what comes out of their mouth. Right. So listen not only to what they say, but listen to their body language as well. And you learn a lot about what people need and what people want. Right. And then you're able to speak to that. If I can give you an example,
Please.
I was a product manager some years ago, and I was sitting between two technology teams. And I walked into a situation not knowing that each side had an issue against the other. So here I come. I got my agenda together. I know what I'm trying to accomplish in this meeting. I need to get this thing built so I can sell it to the client, period. How do we get there, right? The meeting starts, and all of a sudden there's this contention that's going on between the two teams. Stop the meeting, and I said, okay, guys, what's going on here? What do you need, and what do you need? Right? And they said what they needed, and come to find out that the parties felt like they had asked something from each other that was never given. And so because of that, there was no trust between each other. Right? And just me asking them what each one of them needed, I was able to bring everybody to the table. Because listen, I got money to make for the business. I need you two to act right.
Right. That's what the bottom line.
You can act right.
You know, and I consider myself, I don't know about you, Leroy, I consider myself a bit empathetic, right? I have a degree of empathy, and I can pick up on things too. But where I see a divergence in my ability to communicate what I see that's not being said, when I address it, it's different when my women of color counterparts actually address it in the response that they get. For example, I'm a dad and I'm a present father. And just a small example, right, Heidi? I'll go to PTA meetings, parent teacher conferences, and open houses, you know, and we go as a family. My wife, my children, and everybody speaks to my wife. I'm standing there. I wear a mask, so you can't say I'm intimidating anymore. So, right? But then everybody speaks to mom. What do you think? What do you think that is? I don't know. Does that happen to you, Leroy? I don't know.
Yes, sir.
Well, I still think it's about that intimidation that black man shows up, you know, and people feel intimidated. So they feel intimidated with you, but I have to speak in a specific tone. Like I'm speaking now in my regular speaking voice, right? But depending on what I want to say at work and how passionate I am about what I want to say, I have to take my voice down a little bit because otherwise I'm perceived as the angry black woman. I've even had somebody in the last year or two tell everybody she knew that I was hard to deal with. The thing is, people that knew her and knew me didn't believe her. Right? So that angry black woman, we can't be passionate about something because we get labeled the angry black woman, and I got to speak in a specific tone so that you're not intimidated by the way I speak.
Right. Yeah, I've witnessed anger be used as a trope to kind of neutralize us in the workplace. And when I was developing the content corporate trauma, you know, I identified anger as a part of the continuum of symptoms leading up to, you know, feeling the way that corporate trauma describes a professional's work experience. And I had to ask myself, it's okay to be angry if something makes you mad. Right. It's the perception of, right, you know, what comes after the anger, you know, and which that is a perfect segue. Your answer, your last statement is a perfect segue. I've been dying to ask you this question. So I would love for you to give me personally and us and our audience your perspective and opinion on some of the stuff that we've seen in the news and current events pertaining specifically to women of color. For example, the Maria Taylor, Rachel Nichols controversy with ESPN and the NBA Finals coverage. And then we have celebrity personalities like Ebony K. Williams, cast member of The Real Housewives of New York, really talking about divorcing herself from being connected to white fragility and other people's discomfort so that she can advocate for what it is that she has to get as a professional, as a lawyer, as a public figure. And then you have the enormity of the examples behind Simone Biles, the United States Olympic team gymnast, and Naomi Osaka, both of them Olympians, but Naomi Osaka more recently pulling out of the U.S. Open and Simone Biles withdrawing from the Olympics. You know, these are very significant statements and incidents that are happening, you know, and it's not happening in the vacuum. It seems, you know, it's like hot coals in the fire and things are starting to heat up, you know, but what's your take on that?
So let me start with Simone Biles, because kudos to her, right? Because if she needs to take care of herself, her mental state, then kudos to her, right? People need to get up off of that young woman, because she has a right to take care of herself. We love her. We love her accomplishments. We're proud of her. But we're not, all we see is what we see. We don't know what's in her heart. We don't know the kind of pressure that she's under. Right. I mean, the woman's a goat, all right? She just is. Right. Yes. And to be able to wear that, right? The amount of pressure that comes with that. Right. I can't even imagine what that's like, right? Take Naomi Osaka. She doesn't owe the media anything. She owes them nothing, right? You know, part of the, the celebrity of it and all of that is, you know, to have these interviews, but they don't owe us anything, right? We see them on the world stage for the athletes and their greatness, but they don't owe us anything. We don't go home with them. We don't know their situation. We have no idea of the pressure. And so for those young women to take that kind of stand, hats off to them. I'm proud of them. Right. Right. Yes. There's something that went around on Facebook, and I put it on my page twice in the last couple of weeks. Right. It says, if standing up for myself means burning the bridge, I got matches. We ride at dawn.
I'm gonna have to put that on the t-shirt.
Like I'm riding. and Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka are riding. Right. And I appreciate that about them. Right? Yeah. Right. In terms of the women and ESPN, I think ESPN has a culture that pits women in general against each other. Right. I really do. They are such a toxic environment. Now, do I think the comments were wrong? Absolutely. You know, absolutely. You on a hot mic say, you know, my job was taken away from me and given to her because she's Black. Wow. The sister is just as qualified, right? She's just as qualified. And then the guy, you know, I guess he's associated with LeBron James, helped him set up some foundation. My question is, so LeBron James, you still in relationship with this guy? Because to me, he should have corrected her and he didn't. Good right? Because the conversation went on to with Black Lives and George Floyd. I got nothing. Right. So the conversation was just completely out of bounds. Right. Right. And then to apologize afterwards. Me and my mom were just talking about this the other day. And she said she's tired of listening to people say things and then apologize later and say, oh, I didn't mean that. That's not me. That's not my character. Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Right. If it came out of you, right, that's you. That's you. Right. Can we just, I would have more appreciation if people just owned it. Right. And stop with the false humility and the apologies that are so insincere. You meant that.
Mm.
Right.
You know, my wife tells me, hey, the best apology is change behavior.
Right. So if your behavior hasn't changed, then why are you apologizing?
Right.
You said exactly what she said, exactly what she meant. You know,
And that's okay.
and it's so yeah, see, that's
Right.
okay.
And it's all right.
You said
Right.
that.
It's all right.
But don't make it worse by apologizing for something that you meant. Because if you didn't mean it, that wouldn't have come out of you.
Right.
Right.
And it begs a conversation that needs to happen,
Mm-hmm.
especially if the crowd is galvanizing energy around being against what you said. Now you have an opportunity to, you know, broaden your perspective and learn something, even if that's what you meant. So I definitely agree with that. But go on. I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
And so, the young lady is qualified. I'm a huge sports fan, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Huge. She's more than qualified for the role. More than qualified. And kudos to her because she bounced from ESPN.
Pewing.
Bye.
Right. I'm out.
Right. You know, and Leroy, that reminds me of something you always would say to me in our conversations, you know, and you would use the analogy of media putting microphones in the faces of athletes at tough moments.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that should be a rule after a tough loss or a tough situation, you know, they have a personal loss. Why are you putting a microphone in their face? Can you elaborate on that?
You know, for those of us who, you know, whether you play sports or not, let's just take it from the standpoint that not only do you love sports, Heidi, but if you played like I played, like Jamal.
I used to play football when I was a little girl, and my father stopped me when I got about 11 years old. So.
Oh my goodness! One day you got to finish that story.
That's right.
Because I don't want my daughter playing football.
Please don't do that. Me about
I would love to hear about that, Miss Heidi. But you know, just in terms of just basic sportsmanship, caring about what I do, caring about my performance, I'm laying everything on the line, trying to get a particular outcome. If I don't get the outcome, that's one thing. The circumstances surrounding it are something different. The bigger y'all make it, now, if you're coming to me right after something like that happened, first, I'm a human being.
Right.
Second, I'm a human being. Third, don't judge me. Like, what do you expect?
Yeah, those are good rules right there. Don't judge me.
Right.
Right. And they don't even get the basic humanity piece. They don't get 1 and 2.
And you know what?
That's what they're supposed to do.
And that's fundamental to corporate trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
People take humanity out of being a professional as if it's two separate things. No, I love using sports as an analogy, so I'm going to further that line. You know, sports is emotional.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I may not be as objective and rational in the moment. And then you're going to hold that against me as if it's a point of development that I can't grow past when it's only a moment. And that's the kind of conditioning that we get going into the corporate industrial complex. You know, some of the worst advice I was ever given was leave your problems at the door. Well, I may have to stay at the door because that's not possible.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I tried. You know what I mean? And, you know,
I really did try.
People that I respected and looked up to said that to me, but it's just not possible. And Heidi, that speaks to your point. It's the humanity of it all. You know, corporate just means a collection of individuals that are legally recognized as one entity, but it doesn't make those individuals any less human. Right. And it has to be, you know, this is what this platform is about, is to bring light back to the humanity that people bring to creating a livelihood for themselves.
You bring up a point because in the last couple of weeks, I helped a line of business curate an event around. We've been talking about bring your authentic self to work, for how many years now? And it's always interesting to me because that's not possible. Corporate America does not lend itself to that, right? And so we had a discussion on last week with myself and a few other people with a line of business about that very thing.
Right.
And we shared our personal experiences around how people say that, but that's not what you really want. And the proof is when California has to pass a law so that I can wear my hair like this.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
I was born this way, right? I code switching, right? What I can speak, the way I'm speaking to you may not necessarily be how I show up tomorrow from 9 to 5.
That's
right?
correct.
Right.
But
That's
my
correct.
hair is this because I made a decision that number one, I was born this way. Number two, I was born this way. And number three, perms are damaging and they're expensive. And oh, by the way, I was born this way.
Yes.
Boom.
And that's the way women of color start. Like that's where you start. People don't have and it's becoming a bit more clearer to me through your articulation, Heidi. That's your experience. That's where you begin at.
Mm-hmm.
I have to unorganicize myself. Like I can't come as I am. I have to like you start. The women of color start their corporate trauma experience at cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm this thing, but I got to be this to survive. But both of them are in direct conflict with one another.
Direct conflict with who I am, right? I started my career in finance, straightening my hair, all suited up and everything. But outside of work, you wouldn't have recognized me, right?
Yep.
But come Monday, I conformed to what was necessary.
Right.
By the time I got to a certain place in my career and I started working in London, I had started to wear my hair natural, cut it all off. I probably had less hair than you, Jamal, at the time. It was probably some shade of auburn or something. And I can remember the first time we were going to London, and I asked my manager, it was actually before I cut my hair off. I asked my manager and I said, do I need to straighten my hair? And thank goodness I had a really good manager. He said, no, why would you straighten your hair? And I said, I'm just asking because I don't know, culture and anything like that. And I want to be able to, fit in so that I can, speak to the client and go and enter into the rooms that I need to be into. And he said, again, why would you straighten your hair?
Right.
So we're friends to this day.
That's beautiful.
Right. So I'm thankful for having a manager like that.
That's dope. Yeah.
I said something to you yesterday that I want to bring up right now.
Okay. Go ahead.
I said this to you yesterday. That some of the greatest biases and experiences of racism in my career have not come from men. It's come from other women.
Wow.
And for me, it was extremely hurtful because I would figure whether black or white, we have some understanding, right? But women would make appointments with me. My name is on the door. My name is on the door.
Wow.
One behind the desk comes in. Him, me. again, same manager, you need to be talking to her. She runs the business. I'm here to learn just like you.
Mm.
So all of that kind of stuff that we have to deal with and navigate in corporate America. We have to do better as women.
Yes. Wow. And see, I can't speak to that. I can't speak to that. That's an incredible, to me, that's a incredible experience to have to contend with. I mean, Leroy, our experience is not any less intense, but that type of conversation that you just have to have, it's just very, very interesting. And I'm just blown away by that, because I can almost feel your sincerity, and I can reach out and grab your sincerity with respect to that level of scrutiny and experience, and it is just it makes me cringe to think how many other women of color have similar career experience, not just moments, right? Anybody can have a bad day, right? But we're talking about a full career trajectory. And so, Heidi, we would like to give you the opportunity, at this time, with your experience and your passion and everything that you've given to us this evening, with our final question, is to give you the opportunity to advise any women of color professionals out there that might be listening and that will listen to this. What advice could you give them, anyone that's trying to find their lane in 2021 and beyond? What would you advise them?
I would most certainly advise women of color to find an ally. You need somebody that's going to, you need a mentor and you need a sponsor. The mentor is going to teach you and explain culture to you, right? A sponsor is going to speak your name in rooms that you're not in, right? So you need both, right? It's unfortunate what I'm saying now. I had to learn. There was nobody there at the time, right? So I had to learn. You don't have women of color now don't have to learn this on their own, right? We have to create our own networks, right? So that we're there for each other, so that we're a place of safety for each other. When another woman of color in the workplace is dealing with a situation, we need to be able to rally around her and provide a safe place for her.
Right.
We can't be, we gotta pull each other up. Right. And definitely, again, I will say, and the mentor doesn't have to be another woman. They don't even have to be a person of color. Right. But find somebody that you trust. Most people, if you ask them to mentor you, they're more than willing to do it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay.
That's the advice. That's the advice I would give.
So a mentor.
You need a mentor and you need a sponsor, because they're two.
And most importantly, a mentor is not a sponsor.
A mentor is not a sponsor.
Gotcha.
That mentor is, like I said, is going to be the one that helps you navigate the choppy waters, so to speak, of corporate America. That mentor is going to be the one that gives you advice on how to speak to your manager about a raise and all of that kind of stuff, right? Teach you corporate culture. But that sponsor, that person is going to speak your name in rooms that you're not in. Beautiful. Right? They're going to teach you, they're going to present you to leadership in the organization that you would not ordinarily have access to. Right? So I'm also going to shout out somebody's book. I think every woman of color needs to read Minda Harts' book. Yeah, we need to read that.
Absolutely.
Oh God, I just lost the title of it, and I've read it 3 times. That's a hot one.
No, don't worry, we got your back. Watch me.
That's so terrible. because her book is actually an answer to Sheryl Sandberg's. Oh, it's called The Memo.
The Memo. Yep.
What women of color
Available
need
on
to know
Amazon.
to secure their seat at the table.
Yes.
You need to read that. We need to read that. So, and I also said something to you last night that, and I'm not trying to get anybody to buy my book. I'm just kind of saying that.
No, we hold on.
We gotta buy the book, Hedi.
We want you to buy the
We
book.
want the book.
We want you to continue your
Yeah.
streak as a best-selling author.
Yeah.
Reading is fundamental. We
Thank you.
we want you to sell some books
the
here.
project right now. It should be out in the fall.
Uh-huh.
Where 7 women are coming together. The youngest of the women is 17 years old or 18. We talk about experiences like what we're talking about now, navigating racism and biases in our career, and even in our community, right? Because if we know what it is in workplace, but if you take women in different arenas like ministry and church, it's a whole other vibe.
Corporate drama.
So,
Look,
we talk
it's
about
an equal opportunity. I tell people all the time, corporate trauma is an equal opportunity situation, right? You can get it, anybody, anywhere. So yes, I agree with that 1000%.
So I really appreciate this opportunity. This conversation has really been awesome.
I feel so much better. You have conversations sometimes and you just feel better after the conversation. I truly respect your position as a woman of color, but I actually thoroughly enjoyed hearing it and seeing it. And this is the type of energy that we need to see more of, and people being unapologetic about who they are and their experiences. Because what I've learned pushing the corporate trauma concept is that people actually think they're by themselves, and you're not.
You're not.
With your experiences, there are other people out, but those that benefit from your corporate trauma are looking to capitalize on the fact that you're not going to get it, that there are other people out there, and that you would actually even step forward and share your experiences in a collective manner. And this is what this podcast is all about, right? Corporate trauma is acknowledging something that is very wrong in the corporate industrial complex. But this podcast is about embracing it and acknowledging it so that we can level up from it. And Hedi, we just leveled up. So what's the title of your book that's coming out in the fall?
The title of the book, I'm going to say it now because I just got the copyright in the mail from the Library of Congress the other day. It's called Black Girl Cry, What Black Women Need to Know to Amplify Their Voices.
Wow.
Nice.
Black Girl Cry, What Black Women Need to Know to amplify
their voices.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And I say this.
And this is the first time I've released the title of it, so you just got an exclusive.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Hey, look, Leroy. Come on, man. Look.
You were so smooth about her delivery.
Hey, look. I may need to go.
On the edge of my seat.
And tell everybody where you're from, if you feel comfortable, so that they know if they're in your area that you're close. In proximity, and then also how to get in contact with you if they're not.
I live right here in Boston.
There we go.
I'm right here in Boston. You can follow me on Instagram at I am Hedi01, or I'm on Facebook at Hedi Lewis-Ivey.
Beautiful. And you have an open invitation. If we put something out there, and it gives you something to want to discuss on our platform. If you have something that we haven't discussed that you want to position on our platform, we owe you a debt of gratitude. And the only way you can pay it is pay it forward by leaving an open invitation for you to come back.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. You have a blessed evening.
Thank you. You as well.
All right.
Good
Thank you
night.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Leroy, come on, man. Is it me or was that awesome?
Not only was it awesome, but I'm still stuck on her playing football up until she was in. That is so serious.
Right.
Don't stick the microphone in Heidi's face after a loss when she's 11. You know, you competing against boys. The first thing you try to do is win, and the second thing you try to do is win.
And look at the candidacy and the unabashedness in her now as a professional, giving voice. And again, that book,
That's a good one.
put some likes in the chat, some hearts, whatever. That name of that book is Black Girl Cry, What Black Women Need to Know to Amplify Their Voices. And I highly recommend her perspective in giving amplification to any Black woman's voice based on what we heard tonight. So we're not going to belabor the point. This is another awesome addition to the Level Up Past Corporate Trauma podcast. We'll be right back at you next week. And special shout out and special thank you to my main man over here stepping in and helping carry this conversation and co-host as only he could, Mr. Leroy Muhammad, pushing. Please give me your tagline again so I don't mess it up, because I'll mess it up. And I promise the good people to let you give them how they can get in contact with you going forward.
You can reach me on Facebook at T Evolution Real Estate Group. Our podcast is the Turn Your Passion into Profits podcast.com.
See, that was a mouthful. Man, but thank you so much. And Leroy, you're not off the hook. You're not off the hook.
Yes, sir.
You are relegated to coming back.
Yes.
Everybody, just so you know, this is how you can get in contact with myself and Mr. Robert Felder, who is doing the right thing at the right time right now.
That's right.
He would be here. So shout out to my main man, Robert.
Shout out to Rob,
CEO of Felder Works, and this is his contact information here. But until we see you again, remember that this is the embracing and the acknowledgement past the informing yourself that you might be experiencing corporate trauma. Because without embracing, without acknowledging, you can't level up past it. So until we see you next week with another great episode, I bid you well. Have a great week. And remember, corporate trauma is a sneaky passive trauma that'll creep up on you. You don't embrace it and acknowledge it. Have a great evening.